Welcome back to another episode of Fun Friday with an awesome guest here who's going to drop some knowledge on something that we don't talk about all the time on the podcast. Obviously, we're a multifamily owner and operator, but real estate is really mostly not commercial. It's the first thing you own is what? A home, residential. You do flips, you do creative deals, you buy your house, you take out an FHA loan. That's usually the starting point to anyone's real estate journey is the residential side and kind of investing in that world. And there's no better guest than we have today, the host of the Generations of Wealth podcast, Derek Dombeck. How are you today?
I'm good, Craig. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. Hopefully, did I get everything out there correctly?
If you didn't, we'll correct it along the way. No, you did great. You did
Perfect.
great.
Awesome. Well, as mentioned in kind of the pre there, you've got a wealth of knowledge. You said it's about 23 years of experience within the residential and kind of problem solving space. And ultimately, when you're in real estate, people think about, okay, you make lofty amounts of money, you make some big bucks, but you make big bucks and you make good dollars by market growth, market time, and then obviously solving people's problems. And I think that's one thing that you really lead with from our conversations is how do you get someone out of their distress, their problem? How do you kind of create a win-win-win, whether it be providing a problem, whether it be teaching people how to navigate social interactions and figure out how to kind of create a mutual win there. You're a fixer and a problem solver. So it's going to be fun to have that conversation here today. But we'd love to hear about how you got to the hosting world that you're in today and kind of built up your life, from an origins perspective. What is your background?
Yeah, I'll give you the short version of the last couple decades. Like most people, I started off just fixing up some rental properties and grew a portfolio in the early 2000s. And then the markets crashed in 2007, 8, 9. I went down in flames. We ended up losing just about everything. Had a bunch of Florida real estate. I am based in Wisconsin, but I was buying cash flow properties in Wisconsin, and I was building spec homes and buying some existing stuff in Florida. And the big aha moment back then was I had no control over my business. I funded everything with banks, and the banking industry went down too. So at that point, it was either learn a new way, get really good at talking to people, because I was negotiating my own short sales on my own stuff that was underwater, but still trying to move our business forward. So I had to learn how to talk to people. I had to learn how to get creative, take on partners, raise private money. And moving forward as we got through the stress and all the turmoil, I never really went back to institutional funding. And I have nothing against it, but I actually feel like people use it as a crutch to not learn how to do alternative, deal structuring or controlling property using things like leases and options and using private capital. So I won't publicly say I'll never use an institution or a bank, but it's not my first goal ever.
Well, and it's funny, a lot of people use that as their first resort, as opposed to you would seemingly use it as a total break in case of an emergency situation. And would you say that's largely due to the strings attached, or would you say it's mostly due to kind of the amount of money hands needs to be traded and fees associated there and kind of the alpha being beat out of the deal for you?
For me, I really want to deal with people, and I can have a great banking relationship with my loan officer, and then if they're really good, they're probably going to leave because they're going to get a promotion or a job offer somewhere else. Or if they're really bad, I don't want to deal with them anyways. So when I deal with private investors, it's not if, but when there's a challenge with a deal or a transaction. And I want to be able to pick up the phone or go meet in person, talk through the challenges, discuss what our options are and how we're going to solve the problem and move forward. And the other side of that is I've been able to change a lot of people's lives as far as their return for their retirement accounts or their investments. And I have a good friend of mine. I've had $500,000 of his money in play for over 8 years, and he used to get 2 to 3% return. Now he gets 7 to 10, depending on the transactions. That's to some people life-changing money.
That's very meaningful.
Yeah, and so why give it to the institution when I can make money using their money, and we all are better off for it.
Without a doubt. Well, that's a very cool perspective to think about that. And kind of just thinking about being creative here. We'll get to that, but you mentioned kind of investing in Florida and whatnot. And the first picture I have in my mind on, kind of losing those deals is The Big Short. I don't know if you knew where I was going to go with that, but The Big Short, when you see those, lending mortgage bros, for lack of better words, who were in that house, they're talking about, ninja loans, which if you don't know what a ninja loan is, obviously, Derek, you're probably laughing about this because you know what I'm referring to. Ninja loan is no income, no job. That's a ninja. You could also do the 80-20 loans back in the day, which you get 80% down on one mortgage and a 20 on the other. Or, these loans that, fresh out of, courthouse, bankruptcy loans, stuff like that nature. Now, on the stuff that you, unfortunately, and if you don't want to talk about it and don't feel comfortable to do so, feel free to say, I don't want to do it when we get edit this part out.
It's very public, Craig. Just hit me with it.
Gotcha. With that said, what were some of the workouts like and the short sales, and where did those deals go sour? Was it due to adjustable rate mortgages, floating debt essentially on those mortgages? When you look back at the catalyst of the issue, where did it go wrong? Was it a timing thing? How would you kind of assess that?
Well, most of the time when they make movies, they're kind of 50% accurate. The Big Short was more than that. It was entertaining the way they did it, but it was
Well,
quite
who doesn't want to
accurate.
see Margot Robbie, have her scene, right? Of course. Yeah.
Right. And I remember back then, somebody had said this to me when it was too late. Like, when the pizza delivery driver is buying or building a spec home, it's probably time to get out of the market. And at that point, we were too far in because we were building new construction. When we did our first project, which we never over leveraged any of ours, we were at 80 to 90% maximum on leverage on the projects. There were loans available out there for 125% of the projected appraised value on new construction. But we weren't doing that. The challenge was our first two spec homes we built, it took about 7 months start to finish from the time we signed contracts to when we had a certificate of occupancy. By the 2.5 years later, it was taking 12 to 16 months to complete a project. So when you're already, let's say you're 6 months into these projects and you see the market is turning, there's nothing you can do. And then we started getting wrapped up in a lot of fraud. We had one builder that at one time they had us and about 30 other people like us they were building homes for. They were fraudulently taking money off of our construction escrows and sending it to a non-extradition island. The vice president of that company was shot and killed in a robbery gone wrong, which was an absolute hit.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm serious. I got involved in some really, really colorful challenges. In that project, we had a slab of concrete with some pipes sticking out of it on a lot in a Port Charlotte, Florida, and I owed, I think at the time was like $97,000 was drawn against our construction escrow, and there wasn't $15,000 worth of work done, right? So where did we go wrong? We put our faith in people and trusted people that didn't follow through. When the markets crashed, most of the people, even if they wanted to help us, they were walked out of their jobs or quit or fired or the company shut down. And I go back to, we had no control over our business. We really didn't. We were just a file. So now once we were in default and all these foreclosures started hitting us, my negotiations with all the lenders was just with pencil pushers. There wasn't nobody that I could turn to. I didn't have a network. There wasn't podcasts, and hell, the internet wasn't even really all that viable back then to chat with other people. So we were kind of on our own and trying to sort it out from 1,200, 1,300 miles away. So as I was negotiating all these short sales, what started to come to mind was I was doing things different than everybody else, meaning I was actually taking responsibility for my actions. I was not trying to blame everybody that did I get taken advantage of? Okay, sure. we could say that, but that's not going to change the outcome. I still need to solve this. So my local properties in Wisconsin that I had bought as cash flow properties were all funded by small community banks. And I remember vividly going into my one community bank. I asked the bank president and my loan officer for a meeting in the boardroom, and I explained everything that was going on. And my properties in Wisconsin were paying for themselves, so I didn't have any challenges here. But of course, my credit was in the toilet, and I had all these challenges in Florida. And the bank president said to me, he said, "You are the only person that has ever come into us and asked for a meeting to sit down and explain what's going on and with a plan of how you're going to get out of it. Everybody else just hides or they play the blame game." And that was just an aha moment for me, because from that point forward, I really started to pay attention to what I said and how I said it to people and how they reacted. And even today, I believe you should constantly be trying to get better and better. I will record my phone calls. I will voice record, meetings with people if I'm sitting down with a seller or anything like that. And then I want to go back and listen to those. And I want to just analyze my own conversations. What did I do? How did they react? And just take notes. And I did that for a long, long, long time. And over that period of time, as well as just absorbing sales material, books, videos, whatever I could get, I created my own style. And from that, eventually I put together a training on it, and I teach people how to do it, because it's universal. It doesn't matter if you're buying houses, buying apartment complexes, raising money, dealing with bankers, attorneys, contractors. Literally everything you do all day long is a negotiation. You're either leading somebody to a conclusion that you want them to come to, or they're leading you. It does not matter. Just trying to get your kid to go to bed on time is literally a negotiation.
Yeah, I mean, it's sell or be sold, right? Like, the kind of, not that I'm, you have your opinion or not of the guy, but Grant Cardone has a book called Sell or Be Sold. So similar to that, it's everything is a negotiation, and it's smarter to look at the world from that frame. And I do find that quite interesting that of all people, you were wise enough to not dwell on the negative fortune you had, but figure out a way to dig yourself out of it, as opposed to, finger point and kind of, tuck your tail between your legs, and do nothing.
Well, it's easy to talk about it now, and I do call that time in my life one of my bigger blessings in life, because it taught me that I had to be resilient. But when you're in it, it doesn't feel like you have all the answers. You just get out of bed in the morning, put your pants on, and go figure it out.
So would you say, that experience and that crash kind of shaped your theories and your investment philosophy as you kind of proceed forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes me cringe when I talk to people that have been in the business for 2 to 5 years, and it's just been an up market, and they quite frankly think that they can do no wrong. I was that way too back then. I thought I was God's gift to real estate investing. I didn't know nothing, right? But the biggest thing is I'm more conservative on any deal I get involved in. I will not buy a property based on appreciation. I just won't. And I've missed out on deals that I would have made at this point. I don't even want to think about it, but probably 7 figures. But if it doesn't pay for itself and cash flow, I just won't do it. And it's too painful when it goes upside down. And my other pet peeve is, this was another hard lesson learned, people that are using their personal homes as piggy banks with a home equity line of credit, and especially people without experience that go and buy their first investment property and risk the loss of their family's home. Fortunately, I didn't lose our personal house, but it was close.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good lesson there, and I do want to dive deep into this. So this will kind of be maybe the theme of the show, which is not getting over levered, and just to kind of piggyback the sentiment there. Everyone was a genius until deals get posted, meaning, they either, kind of like a golf course. When you play golf, you post your score at the end of the round. That's your handicap, right? Well, you project deals and then you post this, you post the term, you sell the deal, it comes full cycle. Well, now we're kind of having these deals that are either getting forced to sell, they can't raise the capital call, the bank's taking them, or maybe you're getting out for above paper, which is just above the loan amount, but you're getting a total, loss of capital, which is kind of happening rampantly throughout the business, which is the unfortunate reality of cycles and investing. But time and time again, it'll happen. Similarly, just to go back off what you said, find it interesting that you're only looking for cash flowing deals, and you made a lot of good points there. I appreciate the humility in the sense that you did lose out, in your words, on a lot of appreciation, but you also know that in times like this, fundamentals get reset and you could probably buy back in. Maybe you lost some of the gravy on the other side, but you're probably looking around as, I don't care necessarily of going crazy high. I just don't want to go crazy low. You don't want to essentially lose all hard work and have nothing to show for from the years before. So I guess just with that said, you mentioned you're only looking for kind of cash flowing deals, stuff that's positive. What are your metrics? What are you looking for? What are you investing in to get you that? Because quite frankly, most of the more kind of foundational, either gateway markets or, higher end markets, Phoenix isn't a gateway market, but nothing's cash flowing right now here unless you want to get to more of an outskirts area or put about 30 to 40% cash down. And Phoenix is not the only market, but that's one I live in and I can speak to. So I guess, what are you investing in? Where are you investing in? What are the perimeters we need to look like? I'd be very curious to hear all of that.
Well, I'm in the Midwest, so we can still buy cash flow. It's not everywhere, but this is where I like to get creative. So I'll tell you just a couple recent, they're house deals, but this goes across the board into commercial or anything you're doing. I closed a property last week. The owner was behind on his mortgage and great interest rate, 3.15. So we, brought enough money to catch that up, which was a little over $8,000, catch up his loan, reinstate his loan. He got some cash at closing because he needs to move, and he's taking the remainder of his sales proceeds at 0% interest, $500 a month until paid in full, which is about 4 years. And then I brought in a private investor to put up the funds. So oftentimes I will bring in somebody that has an IRA or cash, but I'll do what's called a participating note. So they will get 6 or 7% interest only payments, so that I can cash flow the rental property, and then I'll give them part of the equity when I sell or refinance. And that's a different number every time, but for the example, I'll say 10% of the equity. Okay. So that IRA investor, through a participating promissory note and mortgage or deed of trust, depending what state you're in, they're getting some money today. They're getting tail loaded money, and overall they're getting double-digit returns.
So they're getting cash flow off the deal, essentially, that's 6 to whatever from the note that's there. And then they're going to get their principal back at a refinance or a sell. And then you'll give them a piece of the upside. Am I hearing that correctly?
Correct.
So then what are you getting in return for setting that up? So you obviously have the systems, right, in the lead flow where you get to probably source partner A and partner B. Partner A would be investor, partner B would be, call it the owner, and then C would be you kind of facilitating that all.
I am the owner. I own that property. Okay. So I'm the owner. I'm putting the tenant in it. I'm taking the tax advantages. I'm getting the cash flow. But in this example, I'll just put the numbers to it. These are Midwest numbers. So anybody that's on the coastlines are going to be like, what?
Anyone from Silicon Valley or Manhattan, just disregard the segment or add a couple zeros to it.
Or come and invest with me in the Midwest.
Exactly.
No, this property will rent for $1,300 a month. Okay. It's a small 3-bedroom house. And my monthly costs, including the loan I took subject to, which is PITI, and the seller carryback at 0% interest, is about $1,150 a month. Okay. So on the surface, that does not cash flow because I still have my maintenance, my vacancy, all the other joys of being a landlord. But because the seller is carrying back at 0%, every month I have $600 worth of principal reduction. So I look at that transaction as it is cash flowing. I just don't get it until I resell or refi.
And clearly, you're probably in this position because you don't need cash flow today. You're worrying about equity padding for your tomorrow. Is that a fair assessment because you've got cash flow in other arenas at the moment or other ways to generate revenue?
Yes, I mean this is not a home run deal. This is a base hit, and I'll take base hits all day long because what really is nice is I don't usually hold these properties for decades. I typically will put a lease option tenant in these properties. So in 1 to 3 years, the tenant is buying the house from me, and that's just because I've got way too many stories of trauma and drama with tenants over the years, and I prefer the tenant buyers over the just a standard tenant. So
Well, they're going
in
to
this,
care about your property a lot more, that's for sure. If they're potentially moving there in hopes of owning it, they're not going to put grease on your pipes, you'd think.
right. And I work with them from start to finish. They are working with my mortgage broker to find out what they need to do to qualify for a loan in the future, if they need credit repair, if they need more time at their job, whatever it is. So I'm working with them to make sure that they're set up for success, not just trying to take away their option fee and wait for them to fail and replace them. Again, it's trying to help people, not hurt them. So that's the other side is when I lease option them out, I am getting an upfront non-refundable option fee that goes towards their purchase as long as they do buy it. But if they don't buy it, well, typically that's going to be 7 to 10% upfront of the purchase price. That's cash flow. So yes, it's not going to cash flow on a monthly basis, but I get the principal reduction. And my investor is also getting, because they get 10% of the equity in the property, they're gaining every month on the principal reduction as well. So that's one example that I did last week. A couple months ago, we bought a property, and would you ever pay? And I know that you're not necessarily buying houses, Craig, but would you ever pay full retail for a house as a
Uh,
rental?
I would do full retail if I was buying it for market value, but if it was like something that I could add value to. So I used to be a realtor, so I play this game. I bought and sold two houses that have been market rate deals that had a clear upside and I thought were slightly undervalued. So I guess to answer your question, yes, I would, assuming there was something I could improve on it.
Okay. Well, I will do it as long as the terms are right. So
Yeah,
you picture a teeter totter. If the seller's picking price, then you get to pick terms. If you pick price, they get to pick terms. But it can't be both ways. If
you
it
can't
is
have a one-sided deal.
right, it's not going to be a deal. So this was a clear case. We talked to these people a year ago. They ended up listing with a real estate agent, didn't get a buyer, but were very stuck on their price. And but they own the property free and clear. So I said, we'll give you your full price, but I have to be able to cash flow. And I need payment terms that are going to allow us to do that. So we bought a house for $265,000 and we pay them $800 a month with a balloon at 8 years. And that property, oh, also at 0% because I'm a fan of 0%. So in doing so, that property is leased out for $2,000 a month, and we can absolutely cash flow it. And we're getting $800 a month of principal reduction. So that's just another way to do it. But you have to be able to talk to people in a way that they're going to open up to you and let you know what their real challenges and their goals are to solve that. You know, people ask me all the time, how do you find these creative deals? You don't find them, you build them. You construct them through conversations, and the marketing is the same as every other marketing. To me, when a lead comes in, it's automatically a creative deal until proven otherwise.
Yeah, no, I love that mindset and mentality, and that's kind of the value that you bring, which brings me to my question, which is why does someone in the position that would work with you, who's in a maybe a bind or a pickle, what typically brings them to that point? You know, are they underwater on their mortgage and they can't get out of it, or underwater in their house technically, or they can't get out of it right now due to, their rate, but they've got a good rate, but prices have kind of come down a little bit. what is the reason it would work with you as opposed to just going to the general market? Because that's a lot of the questions I have is, well, what's your motivation behind doing it, right? Or selling?
There's a thousands of reasons, and there's never two situations that are the same. I have a property right now, a lead. This is not under contract. I've spoke to this gentleman for about an hour and a half, and his ex-wife passed away. He was still on the deed for the property, and his ex-wife and the children did not take care of the property. So he's now sticking money into this property. But because he has not lived there 2 of the last 5 years, they got divorced in 2019, he now has a capital gains issue. On top of that, they had a life insurance policy that was put in place prior to their divorce that was designed to pay off the mortgage if either one of them pass before the mortgage was paid. So he's going to collect on the insurance proceeds. My conversation with him was, okay, do you have to take that insurance money and pay off the mortgage? And he said, no, I can do whatever I want with it. He owes $150. The payoff on the life insurance is $200, and the house is worth $300. Okay. When he sells the house, the other children get part of the proceeds of the sale of the house, which he does not want to happen. Okay. So, and I also said, well, what's your basis in the property? So we built it brand new in 2005 or something like that. So our basis is about $140,000. I said, all right, well, what if you take the $200,000 and you put that in your pocket? That's tax-free money because it's insurance money. And then you sell me the house for what's owed, $150,000, which has a 3.25% interest rate. So you sell me the house subject to your existing financing staying in place, and I will hold the property or sell the property. Whatever I do with it, I do with it.
I will get it off your hands.
I'll take it off your hands. And by the way, I'll give you an option, which is a separate transaction to part of the upside of the property in the future, which will probably equate to about 40 grand. So the heirs get zero. He ends up keeping
The insurance money.
the insurance money tax free. And the only thing he will end up paying taxes on in the future is when he receives, proceeds from his portion of that option.
Which almost seems too good to be true is probably what he was thinking on that front. Is that fair to assume?
Oh, he's loving this transaction. Right
Yeah.
now, where it stands is he's trying to get clarification on the insurance policy. We need to.
Yeah, it's not really a deal you say no to if you've got a functioning brain.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing.
He keeps more money in his pocket. That's the bottom line. And Uncle Sam gets less.
And he still has upside there as well in the future, which is also probably nice for him as well. He gets the bird in the hand today and the dangling carrot of tomorrow as well, associated there. So that's awesome. So how many deals of this have you done, would you say, in your time? How many kind of creative, unique, structured deals have you done historically? And it doesn't have to be an exact number if you've done too many, but a ballpark range.
Yeah, it couldn't be an exact number. I've done, because I also co-owned a lending company, a hard money lending company for 10 years. So through all the transactions that I was either did myself or I've kind of mentored people through, it's hundreds and hundreds. I've personally done over 1,000 transactions in my career, plus loans and everything else. I mean, we were doing 20 to 25 hard money loans a month, which meant I was looking at 40 to 60 deals a month from our borrowers. So I've just looked at a lot. I've talked with people a lot, and that's where a lot of the knowledge comes from. I do want to go back because you asked me a question earlier, and I only gave you a half answer. The other thing that I love doing is buying and getting options on property. And when you're in the higher dollar markets that you're in, maybe you can't buy cash flow, but that doesn't mean that you can't go get either lease with an option or straight option on property. And you can do that in growth areas. You can try to get ahead of the path of progress. You can do that with existing properties that have some challenges. It's it's very it's not talked about a lot, and there's not a lot of people that do it. And probably the easiest way to give you some examples is, we had an area of our state that got hit by a hailstorm. Okay, now you've got all of these tarps on the roofs and roofing contractors coming through trying to drum up business. Well, there's a portion of those people that they can't afford their deductible on their insurance, or they didn't have insurance or proper insurance, because the insurance industry is terrible right now, right? I mean, look at California. They're having all kinds of these insurance issues. So maybe I've got a pool of money, or I've got my own money or my own retirement account, and I just start knocking on doors. Everybody's got a tarp on their roof. Like, Craig, man, I see you got a problem with your roof. Do you have the money to fix it? And Craig's like, well, I got insurance, but it's a $5,000 deductible. I don't have $5,000. Okay, great. Greg, I will give you the $5,000 you need, and I want an option for the next 10 years to buy your house at today's fair market value. So it's worth 300 grand a day. That's my price, but I got 10 years to buy it. Why would they say, well, I'm not saying they won't say no, but it's appealing, right? It solves their problem today. Now I got 5 grand, let's just say 5 to 20 grand tied up in that option, but I get all the upside without any of the liability, without any of the maintenance, without any of the management. And now the first question that I can see in your eyes is like, okay, but how do I get my money back? Like, I've got 5, 10, 15, 20 grand. Well, an option is a tangible asset. It can be used as currency. It can be sold. It can be traded, right? So, Craig, I just got this option on your property, and now I go to one of my financial friends or anybody in the open market and say, you know what? I paid 5 grand for this option. You got 10 years to buy this house for 300,000. 10 years from now, odds are really good that house is going to be worth more than 300,000. Would you agree?
I would say that would be a very large problem, that in a 10-year tarmac, that prices have not appreciated, no matter what market you're in.
Right. Just from inflation, it's going to go up, right? So if I came to you, Craig, and I said, you know what? I will sell you this option that I just paid 5 grand for 10 grand. Would you do that deal?
Well, yeah, 100%. I like doubling my money with very low risk.
Okay. But I'm the one doubling my money today. I had 5 grand into it. I'm getting 10, right? So I double my money today. You now have the option. You've got the next 10 years to do whatever you want with it. You can resell it. You could exchange it, trade it. What happens with most options is they actually get renegotiated with the seller or the owner of the property. Okay. So if I need today money, I can go sell my option right away, and I just doubled my money. And by the way, if I did that in my retirement account or my Roth IRA, great way to bump up a small IRA in a big hurry. Okay. Without liability and without self-dealing and without all the things that blow up IRAs. But a lot of times you're going to have the person that is granting you the option, the owner of the property, that doesn't want you to sell or buy their property from them in the future. Well, that's a brand new negotiation. Okay.
So they might have to, if the person says, well, F you, 8 years from now, you're not taking my house from me. Well, no problem. You took this $5,000 here. This contract says I have the option to buy it. Buy my option out for me then. Pay me whatever. So is that kind of the scenario?
Absolutely. And here's where I do things different than most. And I learned this a long time ago. If you hold an option on a property, most people would say, go and record that option on public record. Okay. Record it at the courthouse. Not a bad idea. It absolutely, because that clouds the title. They shouldn't be able to sell it to anybody else. They shouldn't be able to.
Because you're a lien holder on that. Yep.
Right. They're a lien holder. There has been times when options were missed or ignored and properties actually did get sold. And if that happened, Craig, what is your recourse? If you're the one holding the option, I'm the seller or I'm the owner, I give you an option, and I either, because I'm a bad guy, or I didn't know any better. I sell it to somebody else, and now you're holding this option, and there's no property left. What's your recourse?
$5,000, whatever your small note may be, potentially.
How are you going to actually get it though? What do you have to do to come after me for selling the property to somebody else?
You probably have to put a lien on it, or I mean, I actually from a fundamental perspective, I'm stumped. I don't know.
Well, you had a lien on it. That's what the option was, but it was ignored. Title company or closing attorney missed it or just went over it. Your recourse is you go after the title insurance company, you go after me as the bad seller, you go after the new owner of the property. It's a lawsuit, and you're going to be in court arguing over contract law. And that argument's going to be what was the intent of this option at the time. So hopefully it's very black and white and not gray. But even if and when you win, what do you win? Likely a money judgment. You don't get the property. You wanted the property, right? When I take an option from somebody, I make them, or I don't make, I ask them, and I won't move forward without it. They are going to pledge a mortgage or a deed of trust, depending on the state, securing our agreement, securing that option. Just like a mortgage would normally secure a promissory note, it can absolutely secure an option. So now, same scenario. I sell to somebody else. Somehow it got through the title company. They missed this recorded mortgage. Should never happen, but it could. And you are the one holding the option. What's your recourse now? You foreclose. You go after me and the new owner and take the property away. Now who's suing who? The new owner is suing me, but you have the property, which is what you wanted to begin with.
I see. So that makes that very robust and quality from a safety and security perspective.
Now, I'm not giving anybody legal advice. Obviously, you need to know your state's foreclosure laws and everything else. So, don't take this as the gospel that it's going to work where you live. But I've never had to do it. It's there. It comes up in the title search. So I've gotten these phone calls, and they're like, "Yeah, Mr. Dombeck, what's the payoff on your mortgage?" Well, what are they trying to do?
Yeah.
Most of the time, they're trying to refinance.
Hmm.
Well, I don't want them to refinance over and above what my purchase price is, because then they over encumbered the property, right? So this is renegotiation time again. Now I get to call up the seller and say, hey, I don't know why, but this bank just called or this title company just called, asked me what my payoff was on my mortgage. What are you guys doing? Are you selling? Are you refinancing? What are you trying to do? And that's a new conversation. And I just flat out say, no, I'm not going to allow it, or make me an offer, pay me to go away. And that's what happens a lot with options. So if you're in the high dollar markets, you could be going after people that can't afford their real estate taxes. Maybe you go pay their taxes for them and you now have an option to buy their property. They have code violation issues, roofs, decks, windows, siding, whatever,
Landscaping issues.
landscaping, whatever it is. Go and approach them. Hey, I'll pay for all this to go away. Be smart with the money. Pay the contractor direct. Don't just give it to the homeowner and then they don't fix the house, right? But people that are in foreclosure, instead of buying their property, maybe you go catch up their loan and get their loan reinstated in exchange for an option to buy their property later. Okay. So these are ways that you can absolutely buy quote unquote cash flow in non-cash flowing areas.
And that's really creative and a unique thing. And I think Pace Morby, I'm sure you're very privy to him. Maybe you've collaborated with him, but he's definitely made the sub two world a lot more in vogue and has kind of blown up a lot. And I remember a couple years ago, before I switched from career, probably many years ago, I should say, at this point, that was all kind of blowing up, and people were asking about sub two stuff. And although it is unique, it is possible. And there are many ways to skin that cat. With that said, one thing we haven't spoke about is tax liens and buying those. Have you ever, bought those? They seem to be quite low risk, relatively speaking, because if they don't pay the property taxes, you get the right to own and take the property. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there's either tax liens or tax deeds, depends on your state. I don't do it here because our 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 state doesn't force the foreclosure until people are at least 4 years behind in their taxes. And I've
Too
got
long
some
of a
property.
window for you?
Say that again.
Would that be too long of a window, that 4 year kind of delay there, if you will?
I just don't want to wait for that foreclosure to happen. I would rather go and pay up their taxes and have the option, and I'm dealing direct with the owner of the property instead of being the person that's trying to take their property away from them, right? I'm trying to solve their problem. I'm not trying to be some third party that bought this tax lien and now I'm just this big corporation that, is trying to take away their family property. I want them to actually be in agreement with why we're doing a transaction.
Right, right. So it's more of a mutual understanding as opposed to a undesired, forceful outcome, if you will. There.
Yeah, and I'll tell you about one I did actually. It cost me $4,500 to stop this foreclosure sale, a tax foreclosure sale, and he didn't want me to buy the property. So I said, "Great, I'll give you 2 years where I cannot exercise my option and buy it. I have 10 years total, but I'll give you 2 years to buy my option back." And we drafted up the terms. Well, ultimately, he was never able to buy my option back. I've been holding that one for 6 years. I'm in no rush to exercise it. As far as I'm concerned, when we get to 9.5 years, I'll go and sit down with him and talk about an extension because I'm gaining all the upside, and that one sits in my retirement account. So I get $4,500 out, and my strike price, my buy price on that property is 18 grand. Well, it's currently worth probably 75,000. And this is just a small little parcel with a shack on it. It's not a fancy house or anything. But so if I got 4,500 into it and it's worth 75,000 today, and I'd have to give them 13.5 to close the transaction, you do that cash on cash return or that ROI or that annualized rate of return, it's enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that concept there and that mindset and strategy. You've obviously clearly have gone through market cycles. You mentioned that you went through the GFC, great financial crisis there in '08, call it '07 to 2012 there, if you will. What are you seeing today that maybe makes you nervous? Where do you think, from your perspective, you deal with the stress and unique circumstances all day long. Are you sensing or feeling anything today that is reminiscent of before? Do you think we're going into some sort of a market crash here, if you will? Any answer, as long as it's your truth, I would love to hear. So give me your forecasting.
Well, the interesting thing for me is I have a network that spans the whole country, and
In which real estate is very regional.
yeah, so I have these conversations with my guests on my show as well. I ask the same question, and insulated a little bit being in the Midwest. We don't have the huge run ups, we don't have the huge drop offs, other than things like second homes, waterfront. We have a lot of lakes in our area, so a lot of waterfront, type of stuff. Those will see bigger peaks and valleys. I keep a very close eye on the average days on market it takes to sell property, whether it's commercial or residential, doesn't matter. I think very few people actually do that. So what I'm seeing the most is a thinning of the herd, which I love, right? We get rid of a lot of the realtors. We get rid of a lot of the bad lenders, the wannabe wholesalers, and just it gets back to dealing with professionals, and that part I love, and we're seeing that for sure. As far as the markets are concerned, to me, it's Christmas time. I mean, I've gotten myself, because I was conservative and I didn't take a lot of the risks from my past. Yeah, maybe I missed out on some big deals that could have hit, but now I'm ready to like as you said, like 2010, 11, 12, wanted to buy everything, right? Well, now we're set up to be able to do that. And I think there's going to be, just like what you guys are seeing in the commercial space with apartment complexes, there's going to be a lot of people that suffer, and there's going to be a smaller percentage that thrive. And I feel the same way in the residential space. I've never actually been one that liked the apartment complex space because there was so much competition. I tend to not follow the herd. So currently I'm looking at resorts and campgrounds that can be either improved or converted into other use, higher and better use, condos, something like that. And a lot of people are not looking at that right now because they're stuck with other investments that aren't doing so well. And so I see opportunity coming. I don't think in the Midwest we're going to have a recession of, real estate recession anyways. Yes, on the coastlines and parts of Florida. I mean, I saw something this morning. There's out of country owners from Canada. They're just walking away from their condos in Florida saying, take it. We live in a different country. There's nothing you can do to us, right? Those types of things. I vividly remember what that felt like when I was the owner of that asset stuff, back in 2007 and 8, and just having tenants walk away, throw the keys at you, flip you the bird as they were going out. It's a bad feeling, and I'm happy to be on the other side of that coin right now. But I don't think it's going to be as bad. I don't think it'll be.
It'd be pretty challenging for it to be as bad, but in the commercial world, it's very challenging, and I think the commercial world's taking this hits because obviously, I stress this to everyone. Your risk is directly correlated to the leverage and the debt you take out on the deal structure. The reason why deals don't do well is because cash flow and timing. If you run out of timing or have negative cash flow, you're going to be in a problem. So if you can solve for those two things, you'll be resilient no matter what goes on in the market cycle. And unfortunately, a lot of people did size up deals, but on bridge or floaters with 3 years with the 1+1, which is basically if you bought in 2021, your maturities are looming. 2022 alike, similarly. And it's only now it's really starting to catch up with 100% losses, foreclosures, and it's frankly a bloodbath, and sentiment is as low as it's ever been. You're seeing in your world, we're seeing in our world, but that probably means it is Christmas, to your point. So if you're a smart and wise investor who's maybe been patient sitting in this island or been burnt, don't get burnt twice by not playing when it's frothiest. If you're willing to invest in a 3 or 4 cap, you should love a 5+ cap or whatever it may be, right? So just maybe consider that option if you are getting discouraged. Final note I want to discuss here with you is your course. And clearly I wanted to end with that because I wanted to build up your accomplishments to really speak light to the value of that course. So can you kind of break down the course that you have, who it's for, what it kind of covers, and the inception and everything of that nature?
Yeah, so over the years, I was encouraged to put together a course, and I rejected that for a really long time because it wasn't designed or built to be some project that was going to make me millions of dollars. I'm a real estate investor, so I did put it together. I did a 2-day live training with a small room, and then we recorded everything. So it's in video modules, and I can, just deliver it with a click of a button, and people have it in their hands. And that was built by design. But I feel like there's essentially 4 parts to every negotiation. And this is what I walked through the 2 days of training. Day 1 was all content. The second morning was content. Then we got on the phones, and I made the first 3 calls. After that, I had students making the calls. I sat next to them and coached them through a few different things, writing notes for them if they needed. And out of those calls, I believe we had 2 properties that went under contract and closed. So it was really cool. But here's the parts. First one is you got to understand that what you're trying to do is for the right reasons. You're not manipulating people. You shouldn't manipulate people.
Or taking advantage of someone.
Yeah, what I teach you, you could absolutely manipulate people. So it's all about knowing that you have the morals and ethics to do this for the right reason. But in any conversation, social interaction, phone call, whatever it is, in the first 2 to 3 minutes, I want to figure out what the personality type is of the person that I'm talking to. and I want to start speaking and doing everything I do as soon as I figure that out in a way that you're going to hear what I'm saying, not just listen to what I'm saying. So, Craig, if I feel like you're really analytical and I'm the furthest thing away from analytical, I need to talk to you in ways that an analytical person is actually going to hear it. And the sooner I can figure that out, the better. If there's multiple people in a room, I have to figure it out about as many of them as possible and reach as many of them as possible. If you're raising money and you're sitting, in a boardroom at somebody's family office and there's 6 people sitting there, you can't just focus on one of them and talk to them in a way they're going to hear. You've got to figure out how to get your message across. So that's the first key. Second one is you absolutely need to be in control of that conversation from start to finish. And if you lose control, you have to gain it back. It's called frame control. There's books about it. Obviously, I didn't come up with it. This is a conglomeration of all the things I've learned over the years. But if you are, there's either an alpha or a beta in every negotiation. If you don't know which one you are not the alpha. And if you're the beta, you're being led around and you're not going to get the conclusion that you want. So I teach that. The third part is overcoming objections, ideally before they are ever voiced. We all know most common objections in whatever we're trying to accomplish. I want to overcome those, and the best way to do that is through storytelling. Okay. I'm going to give you a great example. I already told you a story about a deal I did last week. And in that story, I talked about stopping somebody's foreclosure, buying it subject to, giving him some cash at closing, then paying him over time, and bringing in a private investor. So where would I use that story? I would use that story if I was trying to raise money. I would use that story if I was trying to talk to a seller who was in foreclosure. I would use that story if I was, talking to somebody just about seller financing. And through all of that storytelling, how I tell it is overcoming objections that are already going through their mind. The investor's objection. Well, what am I going to make? How am I protected? Well, through the story, I told them I paid my investors 6 to 7% interest only, and they got 10% of the equity when I refinance or sell. Right? So all of these things are by design to overcome objections. Once you've overcome all objections, you have got to ask for the close. You've got to get them to move forward. If you do everything else right and you don't actually get them to move forward, it was all for nothing. If you get to the end and they're not willing to move forward, you did not overcome all of their objections. You have to try to get them to vocalize what's keeping them from moving forward and go back to overcoming those objections and then ask for the close again. So that is a very abbreviated description of 14 hours worth of training, but it's called No Means Not Yet, and I live by that.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Derek, where can people find you if they want to listen to you, learn more, work with you, invest with you, and everything else in between?
Easiest way is just my name, derekdombeck.com. There's links to the Generations of Wealth podcast, and there's links to other things that I do. There's direct contact there for me if you just want to shoot me an email. So derekdombeck.com.
Awesome. Derek, thank you for your time today. For all those who are listening, we appreciate your time. We will see you next week.